Okay, cut. Welcome, everybody. We're live. F1 Chase for the title. And today we're going to do a little bit of Paddock news, since there was a lot that went on this week and in light of the potential drivers changes for next season. And we got a big race coming up in Imola, but today we're going to talk about news from the Paddock. I'm JB. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Chase. Say hello.
Hello.
Steve.
Happy Halloween.
Dr. Bill.
Good morning.
So before we get started, we have to note the passing of a legend, Sean Connery, the original James Bond, who's certainly a personification of that character, as well as many others. Passed away yesterday at the age of 90. I'm not sure if he was a Formula One fan. I know he's a big fan of golf and soccer. So certainly an international man in every way. And we like to think of Formula One as the ultimate international sport. So rest in peace, 007. So lots of stuff went on this week, lots of chatter, and let's get right into it. Toto Wolff was quoted as saying that this season Lewis has been at another level, and it's hard to imagine how he could get to another level as he's been so dominant. Dr. Bill, I think you looked into this, and what did Toto have to say?
Toto, it's interesting. Toto and Lewis have been together a long time. They both came to, from what I can tell, they both came to Mercedes in 2013. With also Niki Lauda. And I think Niki definitely had a big role in Lewis's signing, but then also Lewis's growth. And one of the things I kind of got from looking at what's been some of the things recently been published is that, and it's interesting the comparisons to other sports as well, is that Lewis aims his entire race weekend for Sunday. He slowly builds up rather than just kind of go all into qualifying or something like that. He just keeps ratcheting it up session after session, such that when the race comes, he is, just laser focused on that. And I think it was Mugello when he was way out in front, and he just actually kind of lost track of how many laps there were. He didn't realize the race was over. So I think Toto's just seen, and maybe that's a new focus of Lewis's, is to try to aim for Sunday, just slowly build up rather than just try to maintain this super high intensity, which you see in so many sports, the NFL and the playoffs, so many different sports where teams are just unable to maintain this, level 10 or 11 continually, especially at that level. So it was just interesting to see how long they've been together, Toto and Lewis, and just that, him commenting on his focus on just pointing towards Sunday as the focus of the weekend.
It's kind of a scary thought when you think about it, because in effect what he's saying is, I'm at my peak at the race, but yet let's say 90% is good enough to win all these poles. So that's, if you're his fellow competitors, that's got to be pretty hard to listen to. It's like, hey, the guy doesn't necessarily take qualifying as seriously as we do, and he still kicks our butt.
Yeah.
Right, Steve?
Yeah, no, it's impressive.
Yeah, well, whatever he is doing, other guys should try to copy it if they can, because that level of concentration apparently is working very well for him. It's almost like he's talking like a fighter, peaking his training for the fight itself, not leaving it in the gym. Very impressive. Well, Lewis, continues to be the dominant force in Formula One, no question about that. But there are other guys that are interesting personalities, the younger guys that we talk about each week. And this week, Lando Norris made some news, maybe not for all the reasons he would like, because he made some comments that I think he felt were later taken out of context. And so he was also back apologizing for what he said. And Chase, I think you looked into this. What was that all about?
Yeah, so after the race last week, Lando made some remarks on Hamilton's record with the 92 wins. And I wouldn't say they were looking down on it, but they were kind of brushing it off and just kind of saying, oh, well, you should have had that anyways. It's not like that spectacular. Which obviously was not the right thing to say. And he did apologize to Hamilton for it. It's just kind of weird because it doesn't seem like something that he would do, especially how like glowy and bubbly his personality can be off camera. But it was definitely odd. And then he got a bunch of hate, I guess, for doing that, and he had to further apologize on Twitter for it, which I think was a good thing to do, but it was just a weird situation from the start.
Yeah, it kind of makes you wonder what the hell the kid was thinking. I mean, first of all, he's British. Obviously, Lewis is British. He's a young guy. He obviously idolizes Hamilton. All these young guys seem to do that. But yet it was almost like Verstappen, it was almost like in his comments, he was dismissive of Hamilton, which was like, what the hell are you doing, kid? I mean, why would you? It's one thing if you're retired and you're a legend or something. If Jackie Stewart or Lauda said something, which they wouldn't, but if they did, at least, okay, this guy's a legend. He's been there and won championship. You're a kid. What are you doing? So I'm for him, I'm glad he quickly apologized because it could have hung over his head for quite a while if he didn't pull it back quickly. But yeah, it does make you wonder, what are you doing? Why would you say something about that to Lewis Hamilton after he just right off his 90-second victory too? It's not even like he waited.
Yeah, but even on top of that, I found out about it through Instagram. He posted something on his Instagram about it, and then he posted the apology on his Twitter. A lot of people don't have either of those, and they won't be able to find that he apologized. And they probably watched him say it after the race too. So,
well, you also have to consider where his head was at. I mean, here's Norris. He qualified really well for that race, and due to some misfortune incidents, he ended up having a really, really tough race. So, it's probably compounded by the fact that his headspace wasn't where it needed to be, and emotions come out, and sometimes, like in this case, it didn't go to his advantage, and he certainly probably regrets it.
Yeah, well, like Chase said, though, did he write these comments or did he get quoted saying these things? Because if he wrote them, Steve, then that takes a preconceived time that it takes to compose a sentence and whatever. If he was quoted after the race, somebody stuck a microphone in his mouth and he just threw up on a microphone, so to speak. That's right. That's to your point. Then that it's the heat of battle. But if you sit down and write something,
right,
even if it's right after the fact, there's still that gap between thinking it and writing it and pressing it in. As right. How do you feel, Lando, about screwing up this race? That kind of thing.
Right.
But speaking of things that we've been talking about throughout the regular season, with the drama that is Vettel and Ferrari and Leclerc, it continues to be discussed. And now we have a team principal, Ferrari, basically coming out and saying, in case you had any questions about it, the Ferrari vehicles are exactly the same. So there you go. Steve, what did you think about that? Steve, are you there?
Yeah, sorry, just blanked out for a sec. Principal Binotto had made the comments that the setup is exactly the same. You question whether or not it does come down to the drivers, and I think that's something that we've discussed a lot on this program. But they went through, and in overall qualifying and overall performance, you're seeing Ferrari do better. They went through 3 package upgrades. The last one was in Portugal, but obviously you saw Leclerc perform much better than Vettel again. And even in qualifying, Vettel continues to be 12th, 13th. It comes down to what they say is hundredths of a second when they analyze braking and around the corners. Vettel has said that he just doesn't have a good feel for this car, and similar to, I guess, clothing, you can have the same clothing and 2 different people get in and they can wear it completely different. And I think in this case with Vettel, he's not feeling the car. It's the same car that Leclerc has from a makeup standpoint, and he just is really struggling to be one with the car.
Yeah, one of the comments I saw there that was particularly striking to me was the Bonatti's use of the word second driver.
Yeah.
Referring to Vettel.
About Vettel, I know.
I mean, that's a huge put down if you're Vettel. 4 times.
It is, but I think it's defensive. I think it's a matter of him coming back and stop taking all this crap from Vettel about, it's Ferrari. You know what? It's not. It's you. And whether you want to accept it or not, and again, we've observed Vettel the entire season, and he has a very poor attitude when it comes to racing for Ferrari. And, again, you have to question.
Yeah, I'm not saying that Bonatti is wrong to say what he said. I'm just saying that it's a hugely impactful comment that is a big slam against Vettel, which makes calling him a second driver. I mean, that's big. One of the things that we've commented on from time to time is in the off season, the whole e-racing phenomenon and simulating racing that's been going on, and how Formula One drivers, particularly the younger guys, were taking to doing the gaming thing, doing it online. And there's been more and more talk about the fact that even in season, they're using simulators to help them with practice for courses like last week at Portugal, where they've not raced before. And Chase, I think you looked into this to see what the guys were talking about. What did you find out?
Yeah. So they have simulator tracks, and they have these huge simulator rigs too to practice during off season before they've built up the cars and before tracks that they may have never raced for. It's interesting because even something like that the drivers have at their house, like you can get them up to such a level where it's like even the chairs move and stuff like that that you're sitting in. But yeah, if you look on YouTube before every week, they show different drivers explaining their lap through the next course, and I think Nico Rosberg does analyzations too of all the courses.
Well, as I can say that I had not experienced this process and this program before, but last weekend, Chase and Steve were up, and I got my first taste of trying to drive, a version of this in an Xbox format. And boy, it's not easy, particularly when you're an old guy like me, and the hand-eye coordination is not what it used to be. But it does give you if it gives you just a little taste of what it's like. And then we were doing laps, individual laps, so we didn't have cars out there, and we were racing Monaco, and it's like, it's unbelievably realistic. I mean, to the point of crashing all the time. So I could see why these guys take to this, because and the constructors must love it, because at least practicing and crashing on a simulator is a hell of a lot less expensive than crashing with a prototype out there. So speaking of drivers and the silly season, so to speak, continues during in season. And Alfa Romeo came out with a big statement today, or I guess the other day, and Bill, you looked into what they're talking about and the implications for certain drivers. So why don't you tell us what we found out there?
And I just found it interesting that Alfa Romeo chose to stay with who they have. And I guess what they're looking for, maybe as they further develop their car and their system, is just continuity. I think that with everything, it just seems especially mobile this year, with people moving around, different drivers moving from so many different teams, that they may have taken this opportunity to get into that game. But looking through what they said and some of the what the two drivers both said, it looks like what they're really focusing on is continuity in their team, in their whole system, as they're able to further develop what they have in their car now.
And a lot of people had earmarked Alfa Romeo to be the place where Mick Schumacher was going to graduate from, since he's doing so well in GP2, and now that's a question as to where Ferrari wants Mick to go, and do they want him to move up next season? Do they want him to wait till 2022? The rumor now is maybe that Haas might do something, because Haas has got a big relationship with Ferrari and Scuderia, and so that's kind of one of the he's like the hot free agent, Mick Schumacher. But says a lot about Kimi that at 41 years old, he's still viewed as not only a competitive racer, but also a mentor to a younger driver like Gio. So hats off to Raikkonen, because to still have that will to compete and to work out and do what you have to do and also be a valuable team member, I think says a lot about him.
And I think there must be something to the mentoring role, because they did show today's qualifying, they did show Alonso in the Renault garage. So there must be some component to that, to be able to, for an older driver or an older, more experienced driver, to be able to help bring along a younger driver through all the different facets, many of which we probably don't even see,
right,
of the F1 weekend and of an entire season. That there's a certain benefit to that, and Alfa Romeo chose to keep it like that, and Renault is going to have Alonso come back.
Well, it's interesting to your point. I've noted that they've said in various spots that Raikkonen has been a mentor to Mick Schumacher.
Yeah. That,
even though he and his father were teammates, and while they had a prickly relationship, I think on course Schumacher and Raikkonen, off course, obviously they had a lot of respect for each other, because obviously Raikkonen wouldn't be helping out the younger Schumacher if he didn't have respect and affection for his father and such. So, but this week we're in Imola, and there's a lot of stuff surrounding the track, and a lot of legendary car makers, and this region of Italy is pretty interesting. So Steve's going to give us a little bit of a travelogue as to not necessarily the track so much, but the region and the area, and why this is such a big event on the Formula One calendar each year. I'm going to go to Imola.
Yeah, it's a beautiful course, and it has been very popular with the drivers in qualifying, as well as the practice session. It's only a 2-day session, but it's fit nicely in the northeastern section of Italy. It's just east of Bologna. It's a nice spot in between a bit of urban, and you're also right next to the coast, so you're getting the benefits of both the Tuscan valleys as well as the coast. And it's got some nice elevation to it. And frankly, when you think about last week's race in Portugal, where you're looking at almost 270-degree turns, this one is more long and sweeping, and I think that's one of the exciting things, is it allows drivers to go at higher speeds through the corners rather than the tight chicanes and the hard corners.
But also, I think it's sort of almost like a little bit of a Mesopotamia for the Italian car manufacturers, right? Because doesn't Bugatti and Maserati, Lamborghini, right? Don't they have all their headquarters and not far from here?
All within 15, 20 miles of this location. So it is definitely the Italian racing mecca, for sure.
Imagine you got your little Fiat and you're honking the horn by somebody's got a Lamborghini Huracan, and you're like, get the hell out of my way. Who taught you how to drive? Get out of here. Come on, I'm late for work, So people pass you in vintage Ferrari 3.0 GT8s or something, and you're like, what the hell is that? But pretty interesting. So you guys want to chat a little bit about qualifying before we close up here? Because we just had that a little bit earlier. And
sure.
Interesting. Lewis Hamilton not on pole. Right, Chase? What? Give us a little rundown of what happened here this morning.
Well, I didn't quite catch qualifying this morning, but I did look at the end results, and it seemed that Bottas had beaten out Hamilton.
Wow.
Which, that's a good sign. But it seemed like a lot of midfield drivers were placing lower than I would have expected.
Mm-hmm.
But like you have people like Gasly that placed 4th, which
right.
I never would have expected. But
right.
like Sainz 10th, Perez 11, Ocon 12th, Stroll 15th. It's like that. I always think they're going to be in like the top 10, maybe just like the lower half, but that's way lower.
I think the challenge that a lot of those drivers had was, and one of the difficult things about this track is that they redefined the penalty lines. So you saw, Stroll had a good lap, but he was disqualified due to the fact that he went beyond the borders. So, I think a lot of these drivers are really struggling with some of these corners and figuring out the right lines, because it went from a white line to the green, white, and red line. It was constantly changing. And it sounds like the sight lines within their cars, it's very difficult for them to gauge their locations.
Yeah, but they actually said that it was even worse because at one point they said they had some 80 fast laps disallowed because of particularly in this one chicane. And so the steward said, well, when this many guys are doing it, obviously we're going to have to make an adjustment. So they made the adjustment, and then Hamilton gets on the radio and starts bitching about it because he's like, what the hell's the problem? It's like, I had no problem with it. And then race control came back and said, yeah, Lewis, you're the only one. Everybody else couldn't do it. So, but yeah, that's those kind of penalties when you see that. You're like, sometimes it makes perfect sense. Sometimes you're like, what's an inch or two? But that's what the rules are. But yeah, I thought again, apropos of what we just talked about with Ferrari, Steve, you see that Vettel 14th and Leclerc 7th, right?
Yeah, I mean it's like a flashback from last week. Again, it continues to be the story of the season, and I don't know what Vettel's going to be able to do in order to get it better. Hopefully, he can get a top 10 finish out of this, but I guess we'll have to see.
I wonder if he even cares at this point. It just seems like he's just kind of checked out. And when you look at the difference between the two cars on each team, most of the time the cars are fairly close together. It seems to be consistently fairly close together, except for Ferrari. And I feel like there's just the chemistry. Something's gone wrong between Vettel and the pit wall. Something's gone wrong between them. That they're just. I think he's just said, "The hell with it. I just don't want to deal with this anymore. I'm just gonna do whatever I can. And when the season's over, arrivederci."
Like before, though, like we said, or James Beek said, that statement about second driver was going to be impactful, but I don't know. It might push him away even more because there's two ways you could take it. You could try harder, but I don't feel like he's the type to want to try harder with this team. So I feel like that's going to push him more away.
I think he's.
I didn't think it was going to be. If I indicated otherwise, Chase, I didn't think it was a positive statement for any reason that when Bernardi came out with that. But I think to Steve's point that. I think Ferrari's had enough of the Vettel sort of subtle and not so subtle bashing. And so you're right in terms of how does Vettel respond? If he was peeved about being called a second driver, well, sure doesn't look like it based on qualifying here today. It sure looks like you guys are saying, that for whatever reason, he's packing it in and he's got 3 races left with his team and he just wants to get the hell out of there. So it's not good. Whether Vettel can come back with a new team and fresh and be reinvigorated and drive like the Vettel of old, I guess we'll have to see. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see if Bottas, can he take a pole and actually do something with it, or is it just going to be, last about 10, 15 seconds until they get down to the first corner and there's Hamilton go around him? And what do you guys think? Do you think Bottas might be ready to have a breakout weekend and actually finish something that he started? Bill, what do you think?
No. After reading, and researching the stuff about what Toto Wolff was saying about Lewis, you're like, okay, this is just part of Lewis's plan. You're okay. You're where you want to be or where you need to be for qualifying, and fine. You're second. That's fine. You just wait for Bottas to make a mistake, and then you'll take the lead and drive away.
Yeah, I mean, and Verstappen's about a half second back in third place. So I wonder what he's got underneath him this week, whether he can make a push. Because the way I understand it is if Hamilton takes, I think if he gets at least 10 points, I believe that statistically either he or Bottas are going to be the champions because nobody else now will be close enough to catch him. So, but and as motivated as Hamilton is, he probably would like to just end it now and have literally a victory lap last 3 races. But
and hats off to Red Bull. I meant to mention this before about their mechanical repairs that they did in the middle of was it Q2? I think it was.
Verstappen wasn't even on the track. Yeah, at the end of
they just came in, did whatever they had to do. I don't remember what.
Spark plug. It was a spark plug issue, which usually takes 15 minutes to change. They were able to do it within 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Unbelievable.
That's incredible. So.
And Gasly, I think, had a very nice performance in fourth. It'll be interesting to see if the AlphaTauri can stay competitive throughout the whole race and see what kind of tire strategy they use.
Yeah.
Because slightly ahead of Ricardo, who has basically another good qualifying effort. So, who knows? Maybe it will be a fun race, and maybe we'll have a little bit of a different outcome. But as we're saying, everything you continue to read is Hamilton is a motivated guy, and despite even with other things going on in his world, his social activism, the things that obviously are important to him, it clearly doesn't affect this guy when it comes to the track. And you got to credit Bottas because he keeps trying. He's, I think he was doing some whining earlier in the season, but I think he's shut up and basically realized that I'm up against an all-time great legend, and the only thing I can do is do my best, and maybe occasionally I can catch him, right?
And I think the only other thing that the field or even Bottas may hope is that looking at previous races when there was some chink in Lewis's armor, the problem always seemed to come from the pit wall, some mistake on their end, not his end in the seat. And maybe they'll do it, maybe they won't, but I doubt the mistake will come from him.
You're right. He's he when you look at some of the great drivers in the past, all of them have had issues from time to time with self-control and putting themselves in dangerous positions where they shouldn't be, and as a result of that, they either get blocked or knocked off or whatever. I can't remember, probably since maybe Verstappen was like a rookie and was pushing and was banging into Hamilton and stuff. And again, that wasn't Hamilton's fault. But when's the last time you can remember? It's a good point, Dr. Bill, that Hamilton made the mistake that cost a DNF or cost a position. I mean, I can't remember.
Right.
It's been that long ago.
Yeah.
So when you're good and you're disciplined and you're fast, it's tough. It's tough to beat you. So
and you got to keep that mental knife's edge, that mental laser focus for at least for 2 hours, constantly,
right.
2 hours nonstop.
A little bit like being on the show. You know, 25, 30 minutes, you got to be
focus
at the peak. That's why Chase needs to sleep so he can be ready to perform like this in the morning so early.
Mr. 9 points.
At 11 o'clock. Yeah, Mr. 9 points. So before we go, since we're on Hamilton, I'm going to tease one Nostradamus that we have coming up this week for our predictions. And one of the questions was Hamilton or the field? And I hark this back to Tiger Woods in the early 2000s was at such a pace that the bookmakers in London, obviously sports betting huge over there, when it would come to a major Grand Slam tournament, with basically you could get odds on Tiger winning, but Tiger against the whole field. Not Phil Mickelson, not anything else, not one particular guy. The whole field. It's like you could take Tiger or I could take everybody else. You know how many times sucker bets went down in the field and Tiger time and time again won, and basically people lost a lot of money. So I think Hamilton's at that point now. He's Tiger. He's at the Tiger level. So if I said to you, you can have anybody else in the field, I give you odds, say it was like 4-1 odds, 5-1 odds, or I give you Hamilton. What bet do you make? Chase, I'll start with you.
Hamilton. I think if he can get by in the first couple corners, or the first couple laps, he can just wrap it up.
Steve?
I can't argue with Chase. With this type of track, there's only one DRS zone, and even at that, it's very narrow, and I don't think we're going to see a tremendous amount of passing, and so I think those teams that can get out front are going to stay out front unless they screw up. However, I'm going to go with the field because I got to go with hope rather than the data.
And also, Chase is so far ahead, but you need the points desperately.
Yeah, very much.
Dr. Bill, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Steve. I'm really in desperate need of points, trying to chase the
Chase. That's going to be next year's show.
Yeah, Chase, Mr. 9 points. And just to be contrary, I'll go with the field, even though I think the deck is stacked against them.
You know what? I don't know why, not that I play these games, but I have a feeling the field might be the choice. I got a feeling that Mr. Bottas or Verstappen have something up their sleeve, and maybe, just maybe, this week might be something to, if nothing else, to keep Lewis interested. Give him a challenge, because otherwise, we're not going to have much left to be excited about from a competitive mystery standpoint in the rest of the season. We'll still have good races and see what the young guys do and what's happening in the drivers market. So, all right, well, let's wrap this up. I think it was good conversation. As you can see, folks, there's lots of stuff that goes on, even when they're not racing. There's lots of stuff going on in the paddock, lots of chatter. And that's what part of the big fun in Formula One is. There's always something to pique your interest. So we will be back tomorrow with our post-race conversation about the Formula One race at Imola. So until we see you again, here's wishing you time in the DRS zone, and happy Halloween to everybody. Take it easy. Bye-bye.
Ciao.